Which brings us to our very special speaker today. George Wolfe is a peace activist extraordinaire, and so I'm going to take the time to fully explain why he was invited here today. George Wolfe is Professor Emeritus at Ball State University, where he served as a Director of Center for Peace and Conflict Studies from 2004 to 2006, and as Coordinator of Outreach Programs from 2007 to 2014. He is the author of several publications, including his book, The Spiritual Power of Nonviolence, Interfaith Understanding for a Future Without War. That concept has been endorsed by Arun Gandhi, peace educator Michael Nagler, and former First Lady of Indiana, Judy O'Bannon. He is also a trained mediator and served on the advisory board of the Toda Institute for Peace, Policy, and Global Research. In 1991, he was awarded the Open Fellowship from the Eli Lilly Endowment, which made possible his first trip to India, where he was exposed to the nonviolent philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. Dr. Wolfe has received his doctorate in higher education administration from Indiana University. As an educator, he frequently speaks on topics related to nonviolence, peace education, academic freedom, and the role of the arts in social activism. He's pretty much our Renaissance man. In May of 2007, he gave peace education workshops in St. Lucia by invitation of the Ministry of Education, and in 2008 was a visiting scholar at Limburg Catholic University in Hasselt, Belgium. He has also lectured in the Hall of Philosophy at Chicago, I may not be saying that correctly, institution, and served as a panelist at the International Conference of the World Affairs in Boulder, Colorado. And if you want to hear something really good, he, in 2004, conservative commentator David Horowitz listed George Wolfe as, quote, one of the 101 most dangerous academics in America. With that, I give you George Wolfe.
I'm going to take off my hat, but I want everybody to see my Cubs hat, okay? So, thank you for being here today. I'm really glad to be here to speak to you and to meet you and mix with you and so forth, and to speak out about our message in the Green Party and also my campaign message as the Secretary of State candidate for the Green Party. Chautauqua is the name you pronounce that.
Thank you.
I go to Chautauqua Institution every summer. I don't know if you heard about it, but it's on a beautiful lake, and there's a 9-week interdisciplinary program that goes on there. It's just a wonderful place. They have a symphony orchestra, they have ballet, they have plays, they have lectures on world affairs every morning. They have lectures on theology and religion in the afternoon. It's just really a very rich place. And I have this green, and I always try to wear something green, and it happens to say Chautauqua on it, so there you go. You can all practice pronouncing that. It's a Native American name. Anyways, but at Chautauqua Institution in the mornings, there is often a service there where a prominent minister, theologian, priest, whatever, speaks. And one of them was Reverend Alan Jones, who was the former dean of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. And when he spoke, I heard him give several presentations and sermons there, and he always started by saying, there are only two feelings. You can reduce all feelings to only two: love and fear. Only two feelings: love and fear. Fear, not hate, is the opposite of love. Therefore, if you're going to overcome hate, you have to overcome fear. Mm-hmm. And he also would say, there are only two rules that everyone really needs to live by. And of course, we're all expecting him to quote something from the Bible, but instead he says, the first is, everyone matters. And the second is, we are all in this together. Everyone matters, and we're all in this together. This is why I support the movement Black Lives Matter. And this is why I support de-escalation training for community police. And have listed de-escalation training as the 16th point on my 16-point plan for Indiana. If you want a copy of that, it's right here on the table. Please pick that up. And also, while you're at it, sign my petition. Sign the petition to get my name on the ballot. We have to get 26,699 names in order to get my name on the ballot. If I were running as a Republican or Democrat, I'd only have to get 5,000. So do your math, and you can understand probably why that's the case. They don't want a challenge to the two-party system. But it's a shame today, that we even need to talk about race, because the concept of race is really obsolete. Defining people as belonging to different races based on skin color or other features was created over 250 years ago and was used to justify slavery and the erroneous idea of European superiority. And it's time we realize that regardless of skin color, we are all members of the human race. We all belong to one human family. If we go back into our heritage far enough, we all share a common ancestor. A few years ago, my brother had his DNA analyzed. This is an interesting story. His wife wanted to give him a birthday present. My brother's a surgeon, his wife's a nurse, and so she thought the ideal present for a birthday present would be a DNA analysis. Well, go figure that. I guess that's what happens if you're in the medical field. But in that analysis, we discovered that my father's DNA contains DNA from sub-Saharan Africa. And when I found this out, I said to my students, "You didn't know I was black, did you?" We also found out that my father was Jewish. It's loud enough for me. Can everybody hear out there? Yeah. Okay. Yep. We also found out my father was Jewish, and in the 1920s, he added the E to the end of my last name to make it resemble an English spelling. He did this in the early 1920s to conceal his Jewish heritage. As in 1923, there was a revival of the Ku Klux Klan in New York State, where my father was living at the time. I told this story in a sermon I gave at the Unity Church in Anderson, Indiana, some time ago. And afterward, a member from the congregation came up to me and said that his father was Russian, but that his father never spoke Russian at home. And it was at the 1950s during the McCarthy era, and he didn't want people knowing that his sons were Russian, fearing that they would be harassed as communists in school. I envision a day when no one will ever have to hide or conceal their ethnic heritage. For it is time all Americans accept the fact that we are all multi-ethnic and multiracial. We are all part of one human race. This is why I have great appreciation for the Baha'i faith, the model for which is humankind is one. To fulfill that vision, however, we have to help people overcome their fear. And we must stop stoking fear by inhumanely separating immigrant children from their parents, a practice going on today that's far worse than when President Franklin D. Roosevelt created Japanese internment camps in World War II. It is fear that gives rise to hate and eventually violence. And we have to also understand that physical violence is only the tip of the iceberg. The fact is, the roots of violence run deep. These roots are fed by injustice, poverty, and oppression. In peace education, we have three definitions for violence. First, there is physical violence, that is causing physical harm to a person or property. But there is also psychological violence. That's the violence of bullying, intimidation, offensive rhetoric, name-calling. And we hear a lot about that today. And we hear it from our politicians as well. Then there is structural violence. That's the violence of oppression, discrimination, that disenfranchises a certain group of people. Whenever there's a structure imposed upon a population, whether it be a religious structure, social structure, political structure, economic structure, and if that structure disenfranchises a certain group of people, that's called structural violence. If we are going to eradicate war in this world, we must eradicate poverty. If we are going to eradicate violence and mass shootings in our country, we must eradicate bullying, racism, and intimidation. Unfortunately, our political leaders have not been setting us a good example for us to follow. More and more, hateful political speech has become the new normal. The media noted that the Republican primary contest in Indiana in District 6, and that's the district that I'm from, this past spring was one of the most vile in the entire country. And after the November 2016 election, it took months before President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence spoke out against white supremacy rhetoric, and anti-Semitism. The American people are tired of negative political rhetoric, and we're tired of big money corrupting our democracy. The American people are tired of politicians like Donald Trump offering pardons to rich criminals like Martha Stewart, who was convicted of insider trading. We want ethical leaders who offer positive solutions that build peace between nations and between the political parties. Peace is not a static state or condition. It is an ongoing process. It is an ongoing process that we have to invest in. In peace studies, we have 3 definitions for peace. The first is called personal peace. It is the means through which we free ourselves from anger, hatred, revenge, and thereby remove conflict from within ourselves. This is accomplished through meditation, or some form of meditation. Everybody needs a contemplative practice in their life where we can touch the sacred silence within and allows us to be receptive to those deep inner epiphanies which offer holistic solutions. It is through science and reason that we determine what is good. It is through meditation that we determine what is best for the present moment. Then the second definition of peace is called negative peace. Negative peace is the absence of conflict. However, there is no cooperation. You could say that the Soviet Union and the United States during the Cold War coexisted in a state of negative peace, for the most part. The third is positive peace. Positive peace is a state of active cooperation, collaboration, grounded in mutual respect. So how do we build peace? How do we build positive peace? Well, there are many ways. Internationally, we can build it through trade, through cultural exchange, educational research and collaboration, foreign aid to underdeveloped countries, and to countries that are hit by natural disasters. Many of us build positive peace between our friends all the time within society. We also need, however, to build positive peace between those who might disagree with us and who may not be our close friends. But one thing is you don't build positive peace by restricting educational exchange and by restricting collaborative research. You don't build positive peace by slapping huge tariffs on our trading partners. And you don't build positive peace by slapping huge tariffs on our allies. We have to realize that our strategic interests cannot be based solely on military posturing, on natural resources, or on geographical location. It is in our strategic interest to eradicate world poverty. It is in our strategic interest to promote cultural exchange. it is in our strategic interest to offer refuge to immigrants fleeing drug lures and gang violence, especially when the major market for the sale of illegal drugs is in our own country. There's a lot of activity going on here today, isn't there? I hope they get to where they have to go in time. There is another kind of war, however, going on in our world and in our country, and that is the world to save our environment and to save our planet. During my trips to India, I was not able to drink the water in India. I had to drink either bottled water or water that had been boiled for 10 minutes. And I never thought that when I returned to my own country that I'd ever run into the same circumstance here. But if you visit East Chicago, you will find that in certain neighborhoods that is the case. I was in East Chicago about a month ago for the tar sands march, pipeline march, protesting the tar sands march, the tar sands pipeline that carries this toxic waste, toxic material to the refinery that goes right through neighborhoods and right by a school. And I was amazed to see an entire elementary school, which is sitting there closed, can't be used because the soil is contaminated with lead. An entire neighborhood of housing development that's going to be demolished because of lead contamination. An entire neighborhood where people live still, but they can't drink the water, and their soil is contaminated, and they are basically stuck there because the property values have gone down, all because of that toxic pollution. And yet, we have a clueless EPA director, Scott Pruitt, who continues to roll back policies that protect our environment. To win this war on our environment, we must create a sustainable future based on renewable green energy, like sources of solar, wind, and geothermal energy. I am proud to say that at Ball State University, where I worked, the university converted to a geothermal energy system. Just one example of what can result from good ecological leadership. Imagine an entire university now supported by geothermal, and we were burning coal. So those huge smokestacks that used to spew out all that pollution are now closed. We must remember that there is no planet B. The living universe has given us this precious planet, and it is our collective responsibility to care for it. And we must elect lawmakers who respect science and who recognize the reality and dangers of climate change and global warming. And this is one of the many reasons I'm running as the Green Party candidate, because the Green Party offers us a sustainable future. Another is because the Green Party stands for Medicare for all and moving our state toward a healthcare system that serves everybody, and also moving our state toward a living wage for everyone. You know, the minimum wage of Indiana is a disgrace, $7.25 an hour. If you go just across the border here to Michigan to work, an entry-level job, it's $9.25 per hour. So why stay in Indiana when you can just go across the border as a college student, get a summer job and earn $2 more? We need to not only raise the minimum wage to be compatible or competitive with Michigan, but we need to move Indiana towards a living wage for everyone. We need the minimum wage also, we need that wage also to be linked with inflation, so that every year entry-level workers are getting a cost of living increase just like everybody else that works in the workforce. And not only do we need to move Indiana toward a living wage, but we need to do this so we can eliminate the growing class of people in our country called the working poor. Finally, we must work toward changing our political culture from an adversarial culture to a mediation culture. It is important that we learn about this peace studies model, and there are crucial differences. In an adversary culture, it relies on debate. In a mediation culture, it relies on dialogue and understanding. An adversarial culture asserts one's agenda versus rather than have active listening and understanding. In an adversarial culture, you're playing a zero-sum game, and one side wins and the other side loses, where in a mediation culture, we're trying to find a solution where both sides gain and both sides win. Adversarial culture uses hard power of coercion, whereas a mediation culture uses the soft power of persuasion. An adversarial culture cultivates suspicion, whereas a mediation culture cultivates trust. The adversarial culture takes on contentious issues first, and then, maybe if there's time, gets to common ground, whereas the mediation culture finds common ground and works from that point to build trust. If you'll notice, when the current administration took power, it took on the most contentious issues: health care, which it didn't succeed, and also the immigration. And both have not succeeded. They chose the most contentious issues first. In the adversarial culture, we seek short-term resolution for political gain rather than long-term reconciliation as we do in the mediation culture. I have a friend in Muncie, Indiana, named Dave Ring. And Dave is a local foods and grocery manager. He runs a store which has organic food and is very careful about where he gets his products. This year, he launched a campaign to run for the state senate and referred to himself as a Bernie-crat. I supported Dave and went to hear his speech announcing his candidacy. Afterwards, I spoke to him and told him that every part of his speech fit the values of the Green Party. And we were going to make plans to collaborate and work together politically, but unfortunately, he did not win his primary. Dave Ring and I both realized that to move Indiana forward, Democrats and Green Party folks must work together. We need to change our political culture from an adversarial culture to a mediation culture. And if elected Secretary of State, I will look forward to working to the Democrats in our state government. To bring about this political change, however, we must reclaim and re-energize our democracy. And how do we do this? First, by ending the corrupt practice of gerrymandering. I just posted a video on that, by the way, a 1-minute video. If you go to my Twitter page or my website, you'll find it. Secondly, we need to take redistricting out of the hands of politicians. And we need to make Election Day a statewide holiday. We need to offer same-day registration, voter registration. Because in states that have the highest voter turnout, they have same-day voter registration. We need to end voter suppression tactics. And we also, I hope to institute what we call ranked choice voting. I also have on my Twitter page a tweet about ranked choice voting and have a video there if anyone wants to see that explained, very short video explaining ranked choice voting. And there was recently an article from the New York Times written by David Brooks, the conservative commentator David Brooks, supporting ranked choice voting. So you may want to look that article up. It's very good. So in conclusion, I am honored that you invited me to speak today. And I am honored that the sun chose to come out just in time for our rally. You may not believe in divine intervention, but I do.
rain dance.
Yes. Thank you for listening, and I have spoken to you what I stand for and what I pledge to work towards if I elected to the office of Secretary of State in Indiana. And I humbly ask for your support in getting my name on the election ballot this coming November. Why? Because everyone matters, and we're all in this together. Thank you.